Good afternoon. Welcome to Soundtracks of Birdman. Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny. Something is afoul in the land of Denmark between two great friends. Someone said they want to go see it again. Someone else was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
It's, what's funny? I finished watching it last night, and then finally I can go online and read the reviews and see all the spoiler reviews. And it is amazing how I don't think there's a middle. There's a like, God, we hate this, and Disney's, they're just doing the same thing that they're doing with Star Wars and blah blah blah. And then there's others that are just like, man, that was a great time at the movies, and let's go again. And yeah, sure, it's not Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's not Temple of Doom, it's not Last Crusade, but it definitely is not Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So it's really interesting to see how the opinions differ, but I'm really interested in I want to dig deep into it. So hopefully those here have seen the movie. So I think we're going to spoil the hell out of it.
Oh yeah, we're going to spoil everything right here. Yeah. So you ain't seen it, and that's the problem. Come back later.
Well, I mean, I guess we should start. It's either you and or I will start with what did you think of it overall?
I'll let you go first. You're the guest here. Let me watch the chat real fast. Ian says he can't watch it live. David said, bring it on, Birdman. He hopes that both of us are doing well. We shall see. Anders Fox says, hello, gentlemen. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing you kind of liked it.
I thought this was good. It wasn't Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And I remember
it was awesome.
And I came out of that film, the Crystal Skull, with like, what did I just see? But maybe my expectations were a lot higher due to the filmmaking team behind it. But I've seen it multiple times since, and I still don't think it's all that great. But once this thing started, I was on the edge of my seat for those first however long that opening prologue was, because that felt like
that was a great movie.
It felt like, well, it felt like and I wanted to see that. I really want to see that movie.
I do too.
Because it felt like a scene that had been directed for some Indiana Jones movie that came in between Temple of Doom and Last Crusade, or just afterwards, and we had just found it, and here it is. And so, but everything about it felt like it had that edge, it had that excitement, it had the jokes that didn't seem forced. Bad guys were really bad and evil, and things were serious. And
that German commander, he had presence.
So good.
I'm like, dude, are you getting an action figure? Because you need one.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that whole thing was like, wow, they are really, really starting this without a bang. And of course, the whole de-aging thing, there were only maybe two, small moments where it just didn't work. But for the most part, the look of it, I was like, wow, it's pretty impressive. The big problem I had with it was the fact that I think it was Harrison Ford acting in it. So he's still, you could almost see the old man under the makeup or the mask. And the way that he was moving was also very, very slow compared to the younger Indiana Jones. And then they should have somehow AI'd his voice, much like they did with James Earl Jones for Darth Vader in the Obi-Wan series. They should have just captured everything he had ever said in an Indiana Jones film, AI'd that thing, and put it in the movie, because his voice is gone. Harrison Ford is, especially in that one scene later on in the film where he's explaining whatever this dial is and all of the stuff that they have to find in his little office there at the school, and he's just, well, we gotta the dial of destiny in your community's thing.
But he's 80.
And I'm like, holy crap, what are you saying? But see, it's Back in Crystal Skull, he still kind of had that deep Harrison Ford voice, and it would work. But that's my little nitpick. Besides that, the rest of that sequence, that whole it just starts off with a bang. It's incredible. I think we'll talk about whatever logo faded into that scene a little bit later, because that bugged the hell out of me. But then, yeah, and so that I think that's the highlight of the film. But then the rest of it, as it went along, it's a bit excessive. I think there was just too much action thrown in your face at the beginning of the movie. Although there's some stuff that I never expected really to see an Indiana Jones film. Just the blatant murder that happens.
I was okay with that.
I was okay with that. It surprised me because, again, we didn't see Indiana Jones shoot anybody in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. It didn't seem like he was in danger, and that whole New York sequence I thought was actually really, really well done. I just don't think, again, the suspense part where you're just kind of like on the edge of your seat, like I was at the beginning of the film, was there for much of it. But I followed the story. I enjoyed the story. I liked where it eventually ended up. The problem was that it was 2.5 hours long, and I think they could have cut it by about half an hour. And what's her face? Helena didn't annoy me as much as I thought she would annoy me, but she still was a inconsistent character. I didn't know who she was, what she was trying to do. She was very much like Mac in Crystal Skull. She wasn't like a backstabber, but I just didn't really figure out her character. Like, what was she? And so that was it. But I'm trying to think of there weren't really action sequences that were I was like on the like, oh my god, Indy might not make it, with the exception of maybe that whole diving sequence, which I thought was actually really, really well done. The great gag about the eels and the snakes. But Antonio Banderas was absolutely wasted. Why was he in this movie? Kind of was wishing Sala was going to go along for the adventure. I felt bad for him. I felt bad for him as a character. That Indy's like, oh, you don't want to be on this adventure with me, and yeah. But I mean, I might be nitpicking, whatever. But I actually thought I had a good time watching this, and the more that I thought about it, I thought, you know what, I'll go back and see this again. And I think I still will have a good time with it. It's not perfect. It's not the original trilogy, but it's a competently made Indiana Jones film, and I think that's all I could ask for after the disaster that was Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Okay, well, my problems with the Crystal Skull, based on everything I've heard and seen, and I've never sat down and watched start to finish, but I've seen the entire movie, bits and pieces here and there. So, my problem is that Indiana Jones lost his edge in that film. He didn't kill anyone. He put up with Mac way longer than what he would have in Raiders. Raiders, he would have shot his ass and left him. And Mutt just felt like he never felt like a Marlon Brando biker type dude.
No,
no,
he wasn't.
And the little thing with the monkeys and all the CGI, I didn't care for that.
Yeah,
but the refrigerator didn't really bother me. Space aliens, I'm like, I think we could do something else. But I see they were trying to go for like the 50s B movie science fiction thing, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll go along for that ride. I think the score for Crystal Skull sounds like a spot on Indiana Jones score to me. The score in this film does not sound spot on to me, but it's better in the movie than that piece of shit soundtrack they gave us.
I will agree with you 100% on that.
God,
it still has its problems, but man, it is really, really good in the movie.
That soundtrack presentation is
where is that incredible Goldsmithian piano spy 70s music from the New York sequence? Why is that not on the album?
About that, yeah.
How? That is one of the.
I was sitting there, I'm like, I like this music. Where the fuck is it on my CD?
Right? It's like,
it's not here anywhere. I can't find it.
it was, I say Goldsmithian, but it could even, I would say, let's say, if you want to compare it to something Williams, let's go back to the Iger Sanction. It
Yes.
was, wow. I was like, why
Why?
is this not
Why?
on the album? And also, again, going with the music, and I guess I will talk more about the music later in detail. But the performance of the Raiders March during the end credits, you remember how lackluster it sounded on the soundtrack, where it's like
Yeah.
really slow, it sounds like garbage. But for some reason, I don't know whether it was another take or whether it was the sound was different, but that thing hit home for me when they
It
were
was a little
doing the,
better in the motion picture theater.
yeah. But the end credits, whose decision was it to end on such a downer? I mean, look, the music's beautiful. That whole end credit sequence is actually really, really beautiful. Love the Helena theme playing. It's starting to stick in my head. And then all that other stuff with the bad guy music. Oh my God, it's actually really solid. But then it's just like,
But that's not on the soundtrack.
it ends on, sorry, the end credits?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the prologue. They call it prologue to Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Well,
That's the end credits. It doesn't make any sense. The whole soundtrack makes no sense to me. It is terribly produced. Maybe one of the worst John Williams has ever produced. It's bad.
Who's like the editor for it?
It's the new guy. I forgot his name. He, I think, started at once Ken Walmberg retired, and I think his first job was Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So again, I mean, listen to the Jungle Chase on Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and how that's absolutely butchered. But I still, I mean, if we want to talk about the music, I still don't like the callbacks and the inserts of all the old indie music. I mean, look, it works great for a temp track. Whoever did that, it worked great for a temp track in the beginning of the film. But it was like, you have this incredible, like almost lost action scene from a lost Indiana Jones film. And it could have been just the greatest thing ever to hear John Williams just rip through that. And it's like, it's
a train and airplanes dropping bombs and a castle blowing up and a motorcycle car chasing the train. And it's like,
it was like,
bells,
mm-hmm. So that's where my disappointment really lies with that score, is just the also in the insertion of hearing War of the Worlds, not like note for note, but hearing also the spiders from Minority Report, hearing that Tintin cue, which was really off during the escape from the that casino or that hotel.
Yeah.
It was really
I thought the tone of that entire scene was kind of like, I feel like they're trying too hard to play this for comedy.
Yeah, and that's it.
Yeah. Because this could have been a really like tense scene. A lot of bad guys in the room, and we're kind of like, you know.
They played it too much on the comedic side. Even the tuk-tuk chase, which I thought, wow, is actually really well put together.
It was a little long.
It was a little long, but again, didn't have that edge. Had a whole bunch of cameos from other Indiana Jones scores. But I felt
I just want to say this real fast. The track on the soundtrack is 3 minutes and 36 seconds. That scene was not 3 minutes and 36 seconds.
No, but I think that's the best parts. That's the best original music that was written for that sequence. Because then it was like the Escape from Venice was in there somewhere. It all seemed a little, it was not very good. But after that, that film began to slow down a bit. Although, I can't recall. I must have blinked and missed it. When they were in the kind of catacombs, looking for the other piece of the dial, you remember in the trailer where they had to push this giant
boulder.
It's not in the movie, right?
It's not. No.
It's
not in this version of the movie.
Right. Okay, good. I mean, it looked like it was like it was Atlas, right? They were going to and the Earth on Atlas, but it wasn't there. I was like, where is this sequence? That's another thing that I had a problem with Crystals with the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was, when you get into those kind of catacomb moments, for me, I expect like neat booby traps or a neat adventure kind of underground and whatever. And
they had some bugs,
but it also felt like the scorpion sequence from Crystal Skull, where they just kind of like fluffed it off and then nothing dangerous happened afterwards. Again, I'm not expecting to see like the bug trap from Temple of Doom or all the booby traps from Raiders, but I expected them to actually make it a little bit more difficult to get there. And that didn't happen. Also,
That thing gas. What about that?
yeah, and I think that could have played a role into, hey, we got to hurry up and get this going. And it could have been just something where, I mean, Indiana Jones just kind of figured it out of thin air, but it could have been something where they had to like look on the wall and solve that problem or whatever, and try to figure it out before they run out of air. And that might have been a little bit more. We needed more tension, and I don't think we necessarily got that in the film. And I also thought that, okay, finally, once Indiana Jones got shot, I thought, oh my God, all right, now we're literally at a race against time, and all that kind of was going to play in, and how was he going to make it? But it just seemed that there was points where he is just on death's bed, and other times he's like, oh, it was just like a flesh wound. And so I didn't, again,
Yeah, and he got shot like in this area right here.
And he looked at it once and she's bleeding out, and I'm like, okay, well, but it just didn't seem like it was dangerous enough. But I will say, there's two real touching moments for me. One, and I thought they played it off as a goof until Harrison Ford really got deeper into the story, was what happened to Mutt. And I think my wife and I looked at each other and went, all right, well, they killed him off. But then his explanation and how he felt, and then what happened with him and Marion, I had a lump in my throat. Harrison Ford played that so well. And
one of us, I will say, probably cried during that part.
Oh, I wept like a baby at the end.
Okay, then maybe two of us cried.
I'm getting goosebumps right now just thinking about it. The moment Marion asked where it hurt, I was like, screw you guys. Stop it. William, stop playing Marion's theme. Stop it. Stop it. She points to the elbow. I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God, they're doing the thing. And I know that seems like a real fan service thing, but it's a thing between the two of them that only they knew how to experience, or that's a unique thing between the two of them. And it was the most touching thing in the entire world. And I was just streaming tears, and my daughter had to come over and console me. She was giving me a great big bear hug. And it was like, wow, I needed more moments like that. I really did. And it just, holy Christ, I have never cried, with the exception of maybe tears of just pure joy of seeing something amazing. I remember just almost weeping when I saw Raiders played live with full orchestra and getting to see it on the big screen for the very first time. But it was Harrison Ford's delivery in the middle of the film explaining what happened to Mutt and how that ruined their relationship. And then it coming back full circle at that end, I was just like, I was wrecked. And I will give Harrison Ford for whether you hate this movie or like this movie, Harrison Ford owned this film. Harrison Ford
showed up
this role. He showed up and I think he did a magnificent job. I don't know if it's pandering, but my God, I think he was so good. I would love to give him just an Academy Award nomination just because. And I don't like the just because Academy Award nominations, but I thought he delivered the emotion in this movie, and that I really appreciated. I think they respected the character mostly, with the exception of Helena kind of talking down to him and thinking that she knows,
rolling her eyes at him, being condescending.
Yeah, stop it.
I was like, anytime someone wants to shoot her, go ahead and chop this bitch and get rid of her. I'm okay with it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and Short Round 2.0 was the most useless thing I've ever seen. You know what? Although, tell me if you thought that this would have been a really great moment too. Just a tiny callback. But she told the story of how she found this boy's, and I can't even remember his name, and how he was pickpocketing her, right? And he was 10 years old, and she, decided to take care of him. And all Indiana Jones had to say was, yeah, I met a kid very similar back in 35 who tried to pick my pocket, and then he ended up being a blah blah blah, and then you could just play Short Round's theme just as
Yeah.
a quick cameo, and there you go. You would have melted my goddamn heart. And I think there was a missed opportunity to just say something or to about Shorty, because I thought that would have been a great parallel, and it would have been fun. But how many times did you laugh in this movie?
I did not.
Was there anything that just made you giggle?
No.
It happened twice for me. One was the bullet hole in his uniform during the opening sequence, which I thought was great.
That's a very Indiana Jones thing right there.
And that's very Indiana Jones, and that's where I'm like, Spielberg must have directed this sequence. The other one was the eels. Now they look like snakes or whatever, and you're like, they're not snakes, right? I'm like, there's the snake joke. Thank you. And it was a really good snake joke. It was way better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and pretending it was a rope. And I like how he got trapped in the ship with all the eels and whatever, and that fear. The only problem is that you couldn't really see his face, and there's not much you could do underwater, acting wise. But yeah, I thought those two were great. But besides that, the humor really wasn't. There really wasn't a lot of it. They tried, I think, but there really wasn't a lot of it. Do you want to get to the big?
Well, Andrew says he was very touched and crying during those scenes as
great.
well.
Awesome.
And welcome, Andrew. Good to see you here. I don't think we've seen you before. Nice to have you.
Yeah.
David says Bernhard Gutler is soundtrack producer, maybe.
No, there's a kid who's the music editor. He's a new music editor, and he's been working with Liam. God, that's my son. He's working with William since Crystal Skull, and I can't remember his name. Where Ramiro Belgardi. Ramiro Belgart. That's who.
Joel Nichols says Happy Canada Day. I didn't know it was Canada Day.
It is Canada Day.
Well, Happy Canada Day, Eric.
Thank you so much.
He's seeing the movie tomorrow. We're spoiling the crap out of this, Joel.
Yeah, we're spoiling the hell out of it. So you might want to just take off and come back after you see it tomorrow.
Come back later.
I don't want to ruin it for you.
Everything.
Yeah, don't ruin it. You don't go into this fresh. You got to go into this fresh. So see you later, Joel. Joel is a very good buddy of mine. I've known him since I was 14 years old. We played baseball and hockey together. We have kids that are similar age. We live in the same town. Yeah, I've known him and his brother forever. So he's a longtime fan of my podcast too. So I really do appreciate that.
Do you know what else today is? Someone's birthday.
Ian?
No.
You?
No.
One of your dogs?
I don't know when any of their birthdays
is. It Indiana Jones's birthday?
Yes. July 1st, 1899.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Joel, if you stick around, I'm just going to say, if you stick around, we are about to ruin the ending of this movie because I really, really want to talk about that.
I have another question. What the hell happened to Sophie?
She was there for one session, and she was there to ruin the soundtrack.
No. No. His daughter, Sophie.
Oh, his daughter, Sophie. Oh, right.
He had a son, he had a daughter. His daughter's name was Sophie.
Is that when was that brought up? Was that brought up in the Young Indiana Jones?
Yeah.
And Sophie was actually in the.
She was in some episodes.
Yeah, they've cut those sequences out of.
I don't care. I don't. Yeah. Hey,
You know what? That would have been if it was Sophie and Indy on that adventure, rather than Helena.
You know what? I had a thought. This is how I would fix this movie.
That would have hold on. That that thought of his daughter, that would have made the ending way more powerful.
It would.
That would have been. Yeah. Wow. Now I'm thinking about it. There are a few things that they had just done something just a little bit different. I think this film really would have gone for it and made it that much better. But we'll have to talk about the ending.
But it's like you and I said like months ago, like, Indiana Jones needs to lose his eye in this film.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it could have happened so easily.
Mm-hmm.
So easily.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it could have happened. The gunshot could have happened. Gunfire, whatever. He could have.
Yeah.
That would have been. That would have been neat. Imagine he had the patch just at the end, and there's only a certain amount of people that would understand that. But yeah, that would have been interesting.
You know what I was thinking is like, instead of the Basil character,
yeah,
where was Mac? Because Mac and him were in Germany in the 1940s. Because Indiana's OSS and Mac was what, MI6 or something like that.
Yeah, but I think they were spying on the Reds, right? They weren't. Wasn't not during World War II. I think it was during the Cold War, wasn't it?
Well, okay, just run me for a minute. Mac is there in Germany. Okay, so we got to call back to Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
Then we jump ahead to 1968, 69, whatever the hell it is. And Helena is Mac's daughter, who Indiana hasn't seen in years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, she shows up and says, "Hey, I'm in a bit of a spot. Blah 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 blah." And they enter the movie. They're trying to track down the Dial of Destiny, and then she betrays him, and he's like, well, "Why?" And he's like, "Because you killed my father." And he's like, "I didn't kill your father." And she's like, "No, you." And she's blamed him all these years for killing her father. I'm like, I would have liked that.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think I just don't. I mean, I know they tried to connect Helena and Indy with that flashback sequence, which again, Toby Jones is great for the limited screen time that he got, but I thought he was awesome. I thought he was one of the other better parts of this movie. And the de-aging in that sequence was actually really, really well. And I think if they did that for the whole movie with that de-aging, that kind of age of Harrison Ford, I would have bought that as well. But
I mean, you're going to spend $300 million. Might as well make it count.
Where are they spending all that money on? I mean, how much was Harrison Ford making? That's my first question.
I'll just get 2025.
But it's like, why is it that expensive? Why? It doesn't have to be that expensive. It's never making its money back. There's no way it's making its money back. Really, bizarre. But I will say this though, for all of the CGI in the film, I thought it, for the most part, worked. Didn't feel off like it did in Crystal Skull. Everything felt somewhat natural. I bought into it. Except for there's one shot that sucked. I mean, really sucked. Was that wide shot?
Ticker tape parade. I thought
the ticker tape parade wasn't so bad. It was it was Indy running on the train at night from the wide shot. It looked like I don't know how long they took on that shot, but it was in the trailer and it kind of looked really bad. And then I'm like, man, they ran across a real train in Last Crusade. Could you have not run across a real train? Like, seriously? Come on.
Stuntman with a hat on at night.
Yeah.
How hard is that?
Just come on. But I do appreciate that there were real stunts and yeah. But I didn't hate it, and I mean I didn't love it, but I thought that again it was very good. And then I was in for the time traveling stuff, and I think you and I had already talked about this a long time ago that was a possibility that was going to happen in this movie. I personally thought it was going to happen a lot more. I mean, a lot. I thought this was going to be a time traveling adventure. I thought about halfway in this movie they're going to jump to 1939. Berlin, have to get something there. They're going to jump to the future or they're going to jump to the past. It could have been like Back to the Future too. Could have had some fun doing that, escaping the Huns or whatever. And just jumping around in time. Like, let's own it. The fact that it only happened once, it was, and I don't know. It felt that felt a little weird. I bought into it because again, a lot of weird stuff has happened in Indiana Jones films. Spirits flying around the Ark, hearts being ripped out of people, voodoo, 800-year-old man, aliens. Fine, let's do time travel. No problem with that. But I think they should have done more of it. I think they really should have owned it, and that should have been the adventure. finding various pieces of the dial in time, maybe, and that's the only way you can make it work. I mean, then you couldn't have time traveled. But I mean, you had to find something or whatever, and that would lead you to a very specific place in order to, like, they've screwed up the space-time continuum or whatever, and you can only, you have to go to this one specific place in order to fix it or something. I don't know, but I just thought that jumping around in time a little bit more would have been fun. I think a lot more fun. But it was great to see Indiana Jones just experiencing history for real, because that's what he does.
Aside from all the other history he's experienced.
Yeah, and it was just that's where again Harrison Ford just lit up, and you can tell that this character is like, yeah, I want to stay here. This is where I belong, and I thought that was quite. And they're calling it a dragon. And they've actually, they've carved it out into stone, pictures of the dragon with the propeller. And I thought it was fun. Yeah, I was okay with that. I'm not sure what I was okay with Helena punching Indy in the face. Not sure about that. But he was being a grumpy old man at that point. But again, I just didn't feel the urgency of that scene where it's like, you're going to die. And there was just like, we only have a few seconds or a few moments and we got to get you on that plane and something's happening. Like there should have been something a little bit more, I don't know what it was. I don't know what it would have been, just a little bit more suspenseful, I think, in that sequence. But,
and like you said, if it had been his daughter, it would have been more powerful.
Absolutely. Yes. Because at that point, then Helena started becoming emotional. And I'm like, but you guys didn't really like each other. I mean,
yeah, she was trying to kill him for the entire movie.
You're right. Yeah. And so if he had said, I wanted to stay there, and his daughter's like insisting and she's crying and whatever, and they've had this relationship and we had seen that relationship somewhat blossom throughout the film, then, much like the father and son relationship in Last Crusade, and if she had, again, I don't know, I wouldn't want it to be another point where she finally calls him Indiana for the first time. But that would have I think that would have been much more emotional. But then again, I probably would have bawled my eyes out at that, and then I'd have to wipe my tears away and then 5 minutes later cry again. So, but I was okay with the time travel. What did you think of that?
I didn't mind the time travel. Yeah, when you step into Indiana Jones land, you're going to have supernatural otherworld occurrences happen. And I'm perfectly fine with that.
All right.
Well, my problems with the film is Indiana Jones is a alcoholic. I didn't care for that. I didn't care for Mutt being killed off screen. I didn't care for Marion divorcing him. And Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character was just like, I'm like, please. You gotta condescend. You gotta back talk. You gotta talk down to him. You gotta roll your eyes. I don't care to see that. And that Teddy character was kind of worthless.
Yes.
I would have liked, instead of Antonio Banderas, I would like to have seen Captain Topanga. I think that would have been a good callback.
Yeah, that would have been great. You're
right.
Right.
I know a guy in a boat. Hey, Captain Topanga. All right.
I didn't even think of that.
And then, when Solid takes him to the airport, he's like, I brought my passport. And then if India said, mount up, we're going, I've been like, yeah. and I wish Short Round had been brought along for the ride. I really wish they'd brought Short Round back. Either, at least had mentioned him in Last Crusade, or brought him back, mentioned him in Crystal Skull. I mean, something.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the fan community loves Short Round. And let's read the Marvel comic, he's completely forgotten.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, they probably would have liked to have Short Round back because of everything that happened in the past year with him. I'm sure people would have signed up just to see him in the role. And again, an adventure with those two, I think would have been neat.
I think they'd be looking at $1 billion right now.
They would have definitely probably got that crowd that saw everything everywhere all at once, and at least some of it, and then coming over to this. I mean, because it would have been, that again would have just been super emotional. But yeah, you know what? I did like the whole Teutonic thing. That was great. And the fact that Indiana Jones is figuring these things out, but it just seemed like he was he didn't really do much after that whole gunfight, and it was great to see him in a gunfight again, right? He didn't do much.
Where was his gun in this entire film?
Did he not have it on the side, or was it in his
No,
backpack?
no,
I didn't even look for it.
he did not have it.
Hmm.
He had it in the bag at the start, but the German commandant took it out of the bag and took it with him. But he did not have a gun for the entire movie.
Well, yeah, like once he was shot, it became the Helena's Got to Save Indiana Jones movie. Because he just kind of laid there for the rest of the film, which was like, oh, all right. Again, that's why I still love Temple of Doom and Last Crusade, because he's saving people in those movies. He's definitely the true hero. But again, it is a very different type of Indiana Jones movie, because you could see him being forced into this adventure. He didn't want to go. He was done. He's retiring. He doesn't do this anymore. And I also liked him talking about all the steel plates in his legs and the screws and whatnot. But then again, Helena's just talking down to him at that point.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, come on, old man, let's go. So hurry up. And I was like, oh, geez, man, just can it, and get that shit eating grin off your face. Stop this. You're not special. You're a horrible person.
She really was.
The character was horrible.
And speaking of that, her theme does not fit her at all.
When it first played, when you see her in New York, I'm like, ooh, okay, there's a sense of mystery around her. And I think I get that, but femme fatale, I did not get that from her at all. I think tonally her theme, you're right, didn't really work. I thought for a few moments when you didn't know who she was, and the way that Williams was playing it, as mysterious as it was in New York, but that whole sweeping version of it, I didn't get it at all. I don't think. I'm not sure whether. Yeah, you're right. I don't think it fit the character. Although Voller's bad guy motif is amazing.
I liked his.
Holy smokes! Every Nazi motif every bad guy motif he's come with in this series has been fantastic, absolutely fantastic. So yeah, she just didn't have the qualities of, like, again, it's just, I don't know who she is or what she was. I know she was a terrible person.
Yeah,
gotten a whole lot of stuff, and she was trying to get out of it by selling rare antiquities. But I mean,
she called Indiana Jones a grave robber. She's the person stealing stuff to sell it to make money.
Yes,
Indiana Jones is going to some godforsaken country to pull it out of the jungle to put it in a museum to educate people.
At least, yeah, right. At least Indy gave it to a museum. He was a grave robber, yes, but he took all that stuff, collected it, gave it to the museum. But then again, he was still after fortune and glory, and he made money off that. Fine, but she's just stealing stuff from people, selling it to feed her whatever her issues are, and yeah, just strange. But the whole, I don't know who she was. Williams must have found something out, but I don't think she is who
he even said that she's got a classic Grace Kelly sort of air about her. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Is Grace Kelly a skank?
She needed something that was a little bit more deceiving. I mean, much like Elsa didn't have a theme in Last Crusade for a reason. He needed something that was a little bit more what's the word? Not ominous. Like you just don't know what side she's on. Something there, instead of this sweeping old-fashioned theme that I mean, she belongs in the 1960s, the late 1960s, 70s, and it just seems so old-fashioned. And she isn't that old-fashioned type person. If she dressed that way, if she acted that way, I would have got it. I didn't feel it whatsoever. So that theme again.
Here's the thing with Elsa. First time I saw Last Crusade, and she pulls out the Grail Diary, and she's like, "You should have listened to your father." I was like, "Bitch!" I was mad. I was hot. But then at the end, where she dies, I'm like, "No." I was like, I don't want her to die. I was kind of liking her, even though she, did no to, screw over Indiana Jones.
Literally.
Yeah, and what's her face? Locked him in the library with the bad dudes. Told the cops to shoot him. How many other times she's tried to get him killed? I lost count.
Yeah.
But
ambiguous. That's the word. Thank you. Ambiguous.
Ambiguous. Yes.
That's the theme we needed. We need something that could have kind of flip flop both ways. And
like Ray's theme.
Ray's theme again felt more kind of that classic on the nose Star Wars theme. I'm trying to think of something, and maybe people in the chat, I can't think of it right now, but just something that is, what would be a great example of that?
I just want to hit. I'm probably saying this name wrong. The son. How do you say that, Eric?
You're gonna have to phonetically spell it out for us. I'm not even gonna take a chance. I don't want to be that type of person.
Anyways, the theme's very classic Hollywood woman, and Helena seems more like a typical modern 30-something. Yeah. A modern 30-something in 1968-9. Yeah.
Yeah, her having something more edgy and modern might have been it. Like kind of going back to Williams's, swinging 60s style. Maybe something jazzy. It could easily have been something mysterious and jazzy. I think that would fit at least the time period more so than this. I mean, look, it's a wonderfully written piece of music, and
I don't think Annie Sophie Mutter can play Guide for the Married Man though.
Well, she did do Cinderella Liberty. Remember that? So
that's true.
The Schnoz. Okay. Well, anyway, you're right. And I'm happy with a lot of things they didn't do, like too many meta jokes. Yes, too many jokes about his age. There weren't many, thank God. They avoided some traps with that film. I think I agree. I think there was, for the most part, they tastefully addressed his age. Like, oh my God. That whole opening sequence where they're panning in his apartment and he's startled awake and he's just this grumpy old man going next door to say, "Turn down that music." I'm like, that's Indiana Jones now. He's retired. He's in an apartment. He's married. Although I will say this, when I did see the divorce papers, I was like, Christ, they're doing this again. They did this to Han Solo. Now they're doing it to Indiana Jones. Why can't these people just be happy?
And in a way, they did it to Rocky. Adrian said,
yes,
he gets cancer. He's like, I don't want to fight no more. And it's like, really, Rocky? I mean, isn't Rocky supposed to be like the fighter to the very end? Be like, hey, kid, I got cancer, but I can still train you. Let's get this done. Let's make Adrian proud. Yo, Adrian,
Yeah.
But you got to make them old and decrepit.
And I know things can change over time, but look, they got Marion and Indy back together for a reason in the fourth one. But I saw that and I rolled my eyes. I'm like, Jesus, Disney doing it again.
Yeah.
But then, of course, we got to the explanation. I'm like, holy crap, that hits a lot harder. And then everything that happened at the end.
My problem with that, you and I are seeing that as our generation. Indiana Jones was born 1899. He went through World War I, World War II. He lost his sister. He lost his mother at a young age. He lost his father. He served in the trenches. He served in World War II. God knows what else he did. And I'm not belittling losing a child, but people of that generation experience things differently from how we experience them today.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that would have driven them apart. Yes, I think Marion would have been inconsolable. Granted, yes. But I think they would have supported each other because they had gotten married and they're from that time period.
Yeah.
And the only way to get a divorce in the late 1960s was adultery, or like you did something like really, really bad, like you ran off with all the money, or you're an alcoholic. I mean, like a hardcore, full-blown alcoholic. Getting a divorce in 1969 is not like it is today. You just don't go fill out papers, give them $500, and it's done. You couldn't do that in 1969. So that meant Indiana Jones was running around, or he was just a hardcore alcoholic to the point he can't function, which means he would have gotten fired instead of retiring, or he had spent all their money, or I had a problem with that. If you wanted to kill Mutt off screen, you can still do that. Marion can still be in the picture. She can be at the start of the film, and she can be like, look, you need to go and figure out what's going on with Basil's daughter, because, he was a good friend of yours. Insert reason. She puts his hat on him. You can get the Raiders March. He's like, and she can say, I knew what I was getting when I married Indiana Jones, and kiss him, and he goes out the door. And, I would have been happier with that.
Yeah, I mean, now that I think about that kind of ending where she's coming back and they're getting back together, it's like, well, okay, well, would that have actually happened just because he got, shot and sent back to the past 2,000 years? And I don't know, maybe
he's been shot before.
I mean, I think if maybe they were together and arguing and kind of felt separate that way, maybe that would have been something interesting. But still, maybe they manipulated me to the fullest at the end then, with having her absent. One thing I didn't like, though, now that you brought it up, was when he took the magnet off the fridge and covered her face.
There was no music there.
I don't think that's appropriate, because he still had his wedding band on.
Yeah.
I think he still loved her. He still cared for her. And I don't think he liked the fact that she's the one that served the divorce papers. Maybe he's angry about that, but I still don't think he would have done that.
Yeah.
Because Helena even mentions it. You still have your wedding ring.
No magnets here. Been 10 years.
Right. I mean, and so that's where I felt that it ended badly. And that's where my anger came from when I saw that. I'm like, oh man, they've ruined this relationship. But then I understand the explanation. And
did you even notice he had a picture of Marion in his personal effects at the start of the movie?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah. And I thought that was great. I thought that was classy. And it's just like, I don't understand though how they cannot find another picture of these characters that isn't a still from the movie that they were in. Like, do you remember the still? Oh, you didn't see Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
I've seen that part.
Okay, so have you seen that part where it's Henry Jones Sr. and he's on the train, the no ticket, not the train, the Zeppelin, no ticket. It's like, and Marcus was he not in the market, or Alexandretta in whatever? They're stills from the previous movies, so they have a still from Raiders of the Lost Ark for Marion, and I'm sure she has a headshot somewhere that doesn't feel like it's taken from a still from one of the other films.
Yeah.
Anyway, good point on the Catch Me If You Can thing. Yes. Now I'm thinking about it, that would have been really, really something along that lines, of that sneaky, mysterious, ambiguous, again, is the perfect word for Helena. And I think that would have caught the tone of the character perfectly. So that's where I think, even though Helena's theme doesn't really hit me as an earworm, I still feel that tonally it's wrong. It doesn't work. And I rarely say that about John Williams' music. I just don't think that's right. But yeah. What do you guys think of the moon landing? Was it necessary? I didn't get it. Someone has to have to explain this to me who's much smarter than I am. What was the reason for Voller being part of NASA and developing rockets?
He's supposed to be a take on Werner von Braun.
And then there was something about the V2 rockets or something that he was going to do.
Von Braun worked on them for, in Germany back in the day.
Why did he have to be kind of infiltrating America and then doing this whole dial? I didn't understand that part, and maybe seeing it again, that seemed all very convoluted, and I don't understand why that had to be there. And again, why did this have to be during the space program? Why was that so important to the story? I don't think that was necessary.
Aside from him being a physicist that worked for Germany, I mean, I didn't get it either. Because he even said in the movie like twice, he referenced Alabama 2 times in the film. And I'm like, I don't get why you're knocking Werner von Braun. Yes, he was in the SS because he was invited to be in the SS from Himmler. And that's the only reason why he was in the SS. I mean, and he was an honorary position. He wasn't going out killing people in the battlefield.
Yeah.
But yes, they did use Germany used slave labor for all the industrial machine of the war effort. So yes, I guess he was involved in that. If you want to stretch it out, and I'm not trying to be an apologist for von Braun.
No.
I'm just saying, like, I don't know why you're trying to like put Mads Mikkelsen's character kind of like on a Werner von Braun character when they're not really. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
it just didn't seem like it had anything to do with
the story.
I don't understand that. Unless the whole reason was for them to be running through a parade and having that.
What about St. Patrick's Day parade?
That, you know what? That's the first thing it reminded me of. I was like, oh my God, here's Harrison Ford again in The Fugitive. But actually, you know what? Hold My Horse got a laugh out of me too. That I thought was funny. It was just, it's silly, but it's like, here, hold
I actually like that horse scene.
I was gonna I thought I was gonna hate it.
I did too.
Loved it. I loved it. The pageant queen or whatever screaming her head off the whole time as they're driving the car. And I thought, that's all right. I had fun with that sequence.
Why is that music not on the soundtrack?
I know. I think that butted up so closely to the opening sequence, which was spectacular, and then like almost moments later, we're getting the tuk-tuk chase. Temple of Doom, the last 30 minutes of Temple of Doom, those sequences were not. It just, those are three separate action set pieces that really needed to be separated out. The thing about Temple of Doom is that's one continuous escape. He has to get out of hell, and I will see 30 minutes of him doing that, which is glorious. This, they needed to be separated out. There needed to be more character develop. I think they needed to have a scene again for us to really feel for Helena at the end, where there was a father and son scene like they had in Last Crusade. We needed more of those two just talking about family and talking about personal things, them actually connecting. I don't think they connected.
No, she was always
freaking out.
She was talking to him, and he was just like, they're like, okay.
Yeah, and she's talking down to him most of the time. And there's where it's like, they don't like each other. So this whole thing at the end with her crying her eyes out and trying to save him felt like, why does she care?
She was even trying to put, because he's like, like, I don't understand why you're doing this or how you ended up this way, or, and she's like, well, you weren't exactly around. Family's not your strong point. I'm like, bitch.
Right. Wait,
take some responsibility for yourself.
What are you talking about? Again, he had Short Round. Again, that's how they could have connected. It could easily have been that, like little what's his face is out running around with his friends watching something in Sicily, and those two could have been having a gelato or whatever, and having a chat about, relating about having found these kids and saving them, and she's like, well, what did you do? When he, what happened to him? And then he could be
brought back to States. I put him through school, and he's
yeah. And she could be talking about his problems, developing his character, because I didn't care. And that whole airplane thing was, so there's a thing that was dumb. That's probably the only thing that really jumped the shark for me. It's like, he's learning how to pretend fly a plane. Was like, what was that? I'm like, well, that's being shoehorned in later. And then my favorite line though was, he's like, oh, that's an SB, blah, 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 blah. I've never flown one of those. And because she asked, oh, have you flown one of these before? And he's like, oh no, that's an SB, some. I've never flown one of those. She's like, you've never flown a plane before. And I'm like, why did you ask him? You already know the answer to the question. What the hell are you talking about, lady? But he had to be there in order to save them to get back, right? But then again, I thought that would have been something really neat where you could have this this ceremony or whatever it is in order to get back, and the Romans are attacking, and he's like, hurry up, we're running out of time. The whole this thing of running out of time. Indy's dying. Let's get this thing going. We're missing this one piece. Maybe they had to find that other piece somewhere else. There could have been something a little bit more suspenseful in that part. and that would have been great instead of, let's just fly out and get back into time because the portal is still open. How do they know the portal is still open? I don't know. So that felt a little weird. I'm wondering if that was part of the rumored reshoots, because some of that just didn't.
I think that
right.
entire ending was the reshoot.
I'm pretty sure Indiana Jones dies in the original cut.
Yeah, in the other version floating around.
I think that whole Marion stuff at the end was redone. I think him dying was all redone. It just seemed a little bit sloppy. But I love that whole sequence of them flying over the whole Trojan battle or whatever that was. I thought that was just great. Indy's wide eyes and the big giant freaking bomber. I loved how, though I will say this, Helena comes in and she pulls the bomb doors out and like 6 Nazis just fly out. I thought that's fantastic. But I mean, yeah, if you want to get into music, more music, I mean, I think Helena's theme, I think you and I are on the same page where it was just totally just wrong. It didn't work for me. I think like Bowler's music.
I just want to hit some comments real quick.
Sure.
Big Al thinks maybe he covered Marion's picture out of shame for himself. I'm like,
possible. It just seemed more angry, right? It's like,
yeah,
right,
yeah. And Deshaun's talking about Ray's theme, possibly magical about Ray herself, but we didn't know yet. That's why her theme worked.
Yeah, I think those sweeping Star Wars themes, you just kind of accept it. It's Star Wars.
Yeah, but Helena's seems like a skank. Actually, he said sneaky, so skank is my word. Andrew says the Tuk Tuk chase was brilliantly cut and rhythm must have been a lot of work. Yeah, and like there's like 3 minutes of that cue on the soundtrack. Yeah. I
was surprised at how well that was done. I just didn't feel the tension. That's the only thing I didn't feel. I just felt that there was way too much dialogue over top of it. But you're right. I think the way that it was cut and whatever CGI and whatever it was all integrated brilliantly. It was way better than the jungle chase. I will say that. I mean, when cars crashed and the only thing that didn't work for me was that when that one guy tumbled out of the tuk-tuk and it looked really bad. The rest of it, I bought the whole sequence. It's almost like when you name yourself after a guy at the end of a trilogy when the last time you saw him, you clocked him in the head with a stick. It's almost like when you name yourself after a guy at the end of a trilogy. I don't understand that. Clocked him.
I'm not completely following it. More details, please, and we will discuss it. But yeah, Helena's theme doesn't. I still don't. I don't care for it. It's
which theme?
Helena's theme.
Oh, Helen's theme. Yeah.
It's the least.
But I think
I will say this, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, and I may never say this again, because you know how much I just love Annie Sophie Mutter. Like I like her version of it better than just the standard version.
Ooh, controversial.
It's at least it's got a bit more oomph to it. And and that's really all I can say. I still don't like the theme, but at least it's got some power behind it.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
Oh my God. I'm so glad we didn't get that version. Go to the next comment. That he dies.
Oh, yeah.
Ever happens. Nothing he did ever happens. So
yeah, I heard that.
In a montage? Oh my God, that would have been terrible. Yeah. By the way, I have no interest in seeing a Helena Shaw and the blah 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 films. Or
Kathleen Kennedy says it's coming.
God, no interest. She's a terrible person.
Yes,
you're right. Voller's theme sounded those deep brass notes.
I like the brass notes about that. I wrote it on my notes. The prologue, the low horns.
Wow.
I still don't like that for the end credits. So I wish there was something.
I'm okay with the way it plays, except for it needed the coda. It needed that Indiana Jones coda. I also like why Indiana Jones with a main on end. Like, why aren't the credits at the beginning of the film? That bugged the hell out of me too. I thought, oh, look, classic credits, and we're going to see it all like the way they have been in the past 4 films, and they I mean, man, it jumps into the adventure right away, but I still think you could have built up some of the scenery or whatever, and wide shots of the castle. And
it said Paramount Pictures at the start.
I know. So I think we were going to talk about this. The logo, Lucasfilm, the audacity. Get over yourself. The hard cut from Lucasfilm to the chest. Stop it. Stop it. You had Paramount there. You could have, or if you really wanted to do it and make it Disney, you could have gone from the castle to the German castle, or I think it was in France, whatever that castle, like the fade would have been great. That would have been amazing. But they went from the Lucas logo. Stop it. You're full of yourself. Lucasfilm fade out. Stop.
Oh yeah. Thank you, Deshnaz. Helena crying over Indy after hating on him for the whole movie. It's like Rey naming herself after Luke when the last time she saw him. Yeah, she hit him in the head with a stick.
Yes.
And
Yeah. None of her emotions felt earned.
Yeah.
At all. She hated him. I don't know.
I think
unless she wanted to be selfish and she needed Indy to get them back, to 1960. Again, that would have been more in character. She's like, I need him to get me back. Well, that's it. She didn't care, and I didn't care for her, and I'm fine with her being a horrible person. That's fine. I think I don't know. There's, again, going back to so many people getting murdered. So many people got murdered because of Indiana Jones, their association with Indiana Jones, and that I think needed to play a little bit more, a little harder on him. I mean, he did feel it for when Antonio Banderas' character was killed, but man, there was just so much murder. Like the murder in the schools, like holy smokes! I just kind of felt. I mean, because he talked about it briefly, where it's like I'm going to be framed for murder. It just felt like it was like, oh, okay, well that's why he has to go on this adventure. That was just some real hard hitting stuff. Like they shot that woman in the back, and I was like, oh, what? Then the guy comes around the corner.
They brought the edge back to Indiana Jones because they lost it in Crystal Skull.
I agree. It shocked me because of what we had gone through in the fourth film.
Remember that restaurant scene at Temple of Doom with the shish kebab thing?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Right. So, but I mean, as for the other cues in the movie, I also was thinking that this thing was way overscored. Every single moment, I would say, had music in it. And some of it didn't mean anything. Although it did get a good mix. And I don't know why the original soundtrack sounds like crap. That album sounds terrible.
It does. And I've listened to the file that you sent. I've listened to it on YouTube. And as far as I know, the one on YouTube is like a version of the file that was sent out as an advance. I don't know. Because the actual soundtrack doesn't come out for another month.
Yeah. I hope it sounds better on CD because the digital download sounds dreadful. Absolutely dreadful. But it sounded way better in the theater.
Talk about that Germany 1944 track. It's 4 minutes and 43 seconds. In the first 1 minute and 40 seconds, you get a little bit of like Totes theme from Raiders. Did you hear that?
No, I didn't. No.
And then you get the tank stuff from Last Crusade and the boat stuff from Last Crusade. And then after a minute and 40 of getting all those things jammed in there, you get like 40 seconds of the airplane fight from Raiders. And then about the 3:25 mark, you get some new stuff.
I think all the new stuff was it's all the Voller bad guy.
Yeah.
But
that's a horrible piece because that's not even how it plays in the movie.
Right. Yeah, the editing is bad.
Horrible.
It's like Attack of the Clones, where I'm like, man, you didn't have time for him to actually film the actual attack of the clones. That whole epic battle sequence that we were kind of denied. And it was all just needle drop music from the Phantom Menace. At least this was newly recorded and it all kind of fit, and it didn't feel like it was bad edits all over the place, which is the only marks I'm going to give them for doing that. But I'm wondering if that was kind of all, I mean, it can't be last minute stuff because they shot that stuff and they would have to have worked on the de-aging. So, like,
Yeah, no, that was reshot to my understanding.
the opening.
Yeah, the opening is as it was. That was never changed.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, he had that, and whose decision was it to say, like, adding callbacks makes sense when it
makes sense.
When it makes sense thematically. Like, for instance, there was an interesting quote of was the Last Crusade German motif at one point when we saw Voller. I think it was in the hotel or something, and it almost sounded like that kind of those descending notes of the which that's great. I like that. But everything else just felt like it just doesn't. I don't know. Again, you got John Williams. You have John Williams. I would have been like, here's 25 minutes of awesome Indiana Jones action. It's old school 1944. It's like, you're back at Raiders Lost Ark. You're back with Temple of Doom. You're back with Last Crusade. Go. I'll see you in 3 months on the scoring stage, right? Go, do your thing. And I mean, still kind of talk and go, like, because there were stops and starts. The music stopped and started at certain points. Like, there was points where there was no music, but it's like, go, have fun, like, really write your heart out here. And that's the most disappointing thing as a film score fan, because I asked my kids and my wife, like, oh, hey, did you notice anything different about the music in the beginning? Like, nah, I don't know what you're talking about. So, it's us Indiana Jones fans and film music fans.
Because like, we experienced it almost at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the utter, like, disbelief, shock, and enraged anger about reusing those cues. And it's just like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, I know it's not Williams's fault. It's not. He would never do that.
First of all, I think that whole scene should have been scored with no breaks. I think it all could have supported music.
Yeah. But there was just so much awesomeness in that he could have had so much fun. The whole motorbike chase and the whole getting on the train, and then
why did the Spear not have a theme? The Cross of Coronado had a theme.
You know what I mean? That's what I would have been like, hey, this is like the train chase in Last Crusade, but I don't want to hear Last Crusade music. Just go. 59 sync points you got to hit. Go.
Why did the Spear not have a theme?
I don't know. Maybe because it was a fake.
Okay. I mean, Helena's got a fake theme. Why can't the Spear have a fake theme?
Yeah, that would have been great too. I mean, that's where you have a composer like John Williams.
Because they even brought it in at the end of the movie. It's just on his nightstand.
Mm-hmm.
And how the hell did it get there? Where the hell did it come from? I'm just saying. And is it legit or is it the fake? I don't know. I'd like to know. But what if you had that cue music just as you cut across the Spear? You cut, like, I'm like.
Yeah, that's the frustrating part as a film score fan, knowing what you could have got for that sequence and how great it could have been, because the original stuff I thought it worked. I mean, that whole opening where Indy's being taken into the castle and he's strung up. Oh my God, I love the way that he escapes from that whole thing with the bomb. I'm like, that was so wicked. It was so wicked.
It's like, it's on the other floor. Yeah, the other floor. I'm like,
it felt like a Spielbergian escape, and the whole push into the window and the guy rolling down the window and he punches him in the face. Him hiding and dressing up in Nazi, attire. It's like, this is out of Raiders of the Lost Ark. It was so great, very creative. I think that was lost in the rest of the movie, except the New York chase I liked it. It was it was more serious, and I'm glad that Williams scored it that way. But see, that's what happens when you get Williams a chance to score that, with the exception of the Spiders music from Minority Report in there. But the whole sequence with him running around New York was like, wow, listen to that. That's a 91-year-old composer being fresh, like super fresh. He still has ideas. But yeah, it plays way better in the film. I still think it was overscored. It's one of those ones where it's like you're filling space just for filling space. But when the bad guy theme played, I felt it. Helena's theme, the melody finally kind of sunk in. That's all I got from it. I don't remember the rest of it. Some of the action music was a little darker than I expected.
I was good with that.
Yeah,
I like
and
that.
and
Because
so
remember, you said like the tone for Crystal Skull was a bit too
goofy.
goofy. Yeah.
It was, especially that whole kind of swashbuckling thing for Mutt, which again was kind of tonally off for him as much as he's a sword fighter. That whole middle portion of the jungle chase with the Adventures of Mutt music, great piece of music. I just don't think it fits the character.
Definitely.
And I
No.
think I also mentioned that the Crystal Skull music works much better in the Adventures of Tintin.
It does. Which they brought back for this movie.
But tonally, that type of music worked brilliantly in Tintin. I was like, yes, that's where it belongs. Yeah, but in Indiana Jones, it was just a little for Crystal Skull. But I mean, I think this one just had a little. The tone was a little more serious, with the exception of a few goofy tracks. But I will tell you that again, once they started going in time, I was anticipating like, okay, what are they going to do? How are they going to do this? And then I finally kind of sat up and went, all right, let's go. This is the part we're waiting for. I'm kind of sad that it was only like the last 20 minutes and they didn't do more time jumping. Although Battle of Syracuse track, superb. What a wonderful homage to Alex North. And then someone said there was a theme from, I guess, like an Alex North score that he dropped into that sequence. And I forgive me because I like Alex North's music, but I'm just not overly familiar with all of his themes. But that was just some great creative stuff. I loved it.
Going back to the soundtrack again, which I hate, it's only 2 minutes and 51 seconds on the soundtrack.
Battle Syracuse, is that short?
Yes. I wrote all this down before the show.
Oh no.
And, and what I wrote for the notes was, I like the low piano. It needs more music.
Yeah, I just, I think as much as I like this movie, I would love to, like, I'm wondering in the chat, where else would you like to have seen? Like, I was actually really excited to see Indy jumping into 1939 Germany, like how dark that would have been. And then him having to escape that would have been neat. And I was getting these genuine chills. Like I could just, like, all these new Nazis are now going back to where they want to be, and they're gonna win the war. And it's like, holy.
Okay, but see, this is what I understand. If you take out Hitler in 1939, you've still got to fight and win a war.
But he knows. But he's in hindsight, he knows what's happened, right?
Yeah, so but he just knows what not to do if you don't do that.
Yeah. What would have been neat though is that Indiana Jones. Oh, this would have been twisted. This would have been twisted. Halfway through the movie, he has to chase Voller in 1939 Germany to stop him from killing Hitler. He has to save Hitler in order for history to happen.
That was a Fantastic Four comic book with Nick Fury one time back in the 80s.
Did that actually happen?
In the comic book, yeah.
Oh, wow. Now I'm thinking about that. That would have been twisted.
Nick Fury had to go back in time to stop someone from killing Hitler, because if Hitler had died, something far worse would have happened. And that's like all I remember.
That would have been weird. That would have been weird. And I think that would have been neat. And that has a bit of balls to it. But see, that's where the fun is, right? You're going back in time, and then you have to make sure that things happen. And then, you could chase him there, but like, where else would you like to have seen him go? I mean, like, I thought the whole Roman army thing was fantastic. I love that whole thing. I'm trying to think of where else he could have gone. That would have been really, like, lots of fun, super fun. But that just pick 3 different parts in 3 different places in the world, and then just go for it. Just go for it. Yeah, that's where I think they just missed the boat a bit on it.
Sean says, for reference, William said in December, so we have just about completed the film. We have maybe another ending to shoot and to record maybe in a couple weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I think he said that in Italy at the concert he did. And then Mangold was asked about it, and he said, I think John was mistaken. Maybe he reads Twitter too much. I don't think John knows what a Twitter is.
I don't think he knows what that is.
And then, like, when we were in Chicago, John Williams said, I think we're done finally with Indiana Jones. I'm not sure. Remember when he said that?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would
Yeah,
actually like to see that.
He had said a couple times. He's like, yeah, I got to go back and rescore the ending. Okay. Why are you rescoring an ending unless it's being changed?
What a bad idea that would have been. I'd like to see it. I want to see it just to laugh at it. But that's a bad idea. That's a bad idea.
Andrew says Mayan time.
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, they could have made up for how crappy, all that stuff when in King of the Crystal Skull. Like, someone's getting, like, that's the thing. Someone gets captured and they're going to be sacrificed, like in Temple of Doom. He has to save Teddy, or what the hell is that his name? Teddy?
Yeah.
Save him from something. I mean, you could have these fun little adventures, and which starts with that whole opening sequence, right? It's like, hey, we've gone back in time. Here's a neat sequence, and then kind of like go to another sequence, and yeah, sure, it's like it's another search for the thing to get another thing to get another thing. But in between those sequences, you can have those kind of human personal moments. But you could have all of your great action sequence, like you could have had the great New York sequence, but then everything else is in some other moment in time, and you didn't need a plane and go through this time portal. You could have done something with the dial, and it would have been a lot of fun. I think that would have been a lot of fun, and you're still chasing something in time to get it in order to fix something at the end of the movie. I mean, it seems very convoluted, but I think that would have been. I don't know what I mean. I've read reviews where people just don't buy the time travel stuff. They're just like, I'm done with it after that. But I'm like, seriously, you saw aliens in the fourth one and everything else that you've seen in the other ones. You're okay with that? You're okay with the guy still alive after having his heart ripped out? Okay, that's fine.
I didn't mind the refrigerator because I didn't mind the inflatable raft.
I bought the inflatable raft more than I did the refrigerator. I think the problem with the refrigerator is they went for laughs and goofs on it. If he didn't bounce around,
that's my problem with Crystal Skull. It just lost its edge.
Yeah, I don't mind if even the fridge just stayed still or was just kind of like
knocked
over, and then he kind of gets out and he's left with the mushroom cloud and everything else destroyed around him. But they went for goofy laughs, which God, I although Spielberg says I think it was his idea to do that, but that's just a dumb George Lucas joke for me. That whole nuke the fridge thing. I would have bought it. I bought the whole, him trying to figure it out and getting in and whatever, because it's lead lined. I thought that's great. But then the whole, even the sound, they had this cartoon Looney Tunes sound while it was getting projected over into the desert. I'm like, are you serious? Like, why don't you just add some bowling pins when he crashes into the ground while you're at it? Like, stop it.
Such a missed opportunity right now.
Yeah. But I mean the raft, yeah, I think sure, that's a hard hitting landing, but I believed that more so that they could somewhat survive that in Indiana Jones kind of logic than nuke the fridge. And the whole slalom down the mountain and going over the cliff again is just so much fun. And yes, Mythbusters did do a sequence, and I think that the dummy that they put in it would have just had all their bones smashed up, but they could have survived. Could have survived. But I like it. Yeah, it seemed way more fun than Nuke the Fridge, which went for a gag and it didn't, and it fell rather flat. But yeah, there's not a lot that bothered me with this one, and I'm trying to think of what else musically was there a real? I mean, I think the highlight for me was the New York music, was the whole To the Airport music, everything with Voller, going into time, and then the Battle of Syracuse, that lovely moment of Marion's theme, both times where Indy's telling the story about Mutt and then reuniting with Marion. The alternate performance of the Raiders March during the main on end, and then the whole end credits. But I think that's what I took away from it. The rest of it seemed rather
blah and
yeah. I think it was well scored. Again, I think it was overscored,
I
But I
don't.
don't think it had as many highlights as the other ones do. But
I think if this wasn't an Indiana Jones score, it would be pretty good. But this is an Indiana Jones score, and
right.
it's just not there.
Yeah. And I can see why Spielberg didn't want to do this, although I think he might have injected a bit more that kind of humanity into, like, his thing would be like, you know what, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to address this and this, much like I'm pretty sure he didn't want to do Last Crusade. He was, contracted to do it, and then he's like, all right, we got to do this father-son thing. That's the true MacGuffin here in this film. It's not the Holy Grail, it's that father-son relationship, and that's what makes that film.
And even the Grail theme emphasized that.
Yes, very much so. And there's a connection there between the two of them. And even, I mean, you ever watch Spielberg talking about that whole, I think you sent it to me, that whole sequence where, Elsa reaches for the Grail, then Indy reaches for the Grail. And we all know, Henry calling him Indiana for the first time is just brilliant. And that's the connection. And that's the problem with this movie, is you don't have that connection between Helena and Indy. You don't have the emotional connection.
But again, if it had been his daughter,
yes,
if it had been Sophie.
Yeah. And that, because even the flashback was a chance
Williams
to
scoring a father-daughter Indiana Jones theme.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It would have been in the father-daughter theme. Like, oh my God, he could have just laid it on. But I mean, I guess you have a Helena's theme,
which sucks.
And but it didn't work for Indy and Helena, whereas the Jones, there was a Jones theme in Last Crusade. As much as it did represent Henry Jones Sr., it came together as the father-son theme and connected the two of them together in that relationship. So Helena's theme didn't really transform and become that.
Because they didn't have a relationship, except she hates him.
Right.
She hates everybody.
The MacGuffin. Yeah, you're right. The Dial of Destiny theme. That's the thing, I forgot about it. Yeah, I'd have to go back and watch it again. But I do remember going, oh, there's a theme for the Dial of Destiny. I can't recall it, unfortunately.
It's just not a good Indiana Jones score.
Yeah. It's not my favorite of the bunch. It's my least
You're
favorite.
being way nice there, my friend.
I am. Again, I like it. Its thing is, I like it better in the movie. I don't know. I have about a 35 to 40 minute playlist of my favorite tracks. It was by the way, the map, the two map scenes just seemed off. The effects for that just seemed,
they're different.
They're very, I'm like, why are you changing it? Why are you changing it?
But on the soundtrack, I'm guessing that was the 2 Athens track and the 2 Morocco track.
Yeah.
And those were 2 of the tracks that I actually kind of liked on the soundtrack that we got.
But it's interesting that Indiana Jones's theme didn't play over the first map. It was Helena's theme.
Yeah.
And then Indiana Jones' theme hits when they landed, and I like that version of the theme. It's very nice. I could have used more Indiana Jones theme, like more heroic Indiana Jones stuff, like Temple of Doom. I think I love Temple of Doom just because they play the Indiana Jones theme a million times. I love it. Like, I don't know why Spielberg felt like, anytime Indy does something heroic, we always play the theme and we got to cut it down for Last Crusade. It's like, no, we need more Indiana Jones theme. And
there's not a lot of it in this film.
No, there really isn't. And I don't think there was a point where it kind of, except for at the beginning when we heard it, I was like, okay, that's great. But that sequence just felt like something totally, completely different. But yeah, musically, this is my least favorite. The film is obviously under the main trilogy, but it is infinitely better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And I do want to see this again. I'm going to take my son, who will be awake this time, to watch it. And I think I will enjoy it just as much as I did the first time. and I kind of know what to expect, so I'll pay attention more to things. But still, the ADR of Harrison Ford was just, it's like, man, if you're going to do exposition, make sure you can understand the man. But I think, I mean, as much as it's kind of silly seeing an 80-year-old in the Indiana Jones garb, I kind of bought it because he was, I guess, dressed up somewhat to go to that hotel for the auction. So he wore his tie, he's wearing the hat and the jacket. So he's somewhat dressed up, and that's how you get him into his outfit, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, I didn't hate it, thank God. And I think it gave me exactly what I wanted. I wanted a competently made Indiana Jones film that could take the bad taste of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull out of my mouth and kind of have a satisfying emotional ending. And I wouldn't have got that if they didn't have the Marion indie theme or indie scene right at the end there. And that just got me. Love the grabbing of the hat at the end. I think that's great. And yeah, so I had a good time. I did. I really had a good time, and I was emotional. It's crazy. This is the one that made me cry.
I wouldn't say I had a good time.
You needed to see it with me. You need to see it with people. I think that's it. I think you need to see it with somebody.
There was like 5 other people in that theater.
Right? You saw it in the afternoon, right?
I saw it at 10 o'clock this morning.
Oh, you saw it? Oh, that's right. Nobody's awake yet. It's Saturday.
Yeah, one thing going back to the score, when he's on the boat and he's talking about Mutt, why didn't we get Mutt's theme?
Yeah, true.
Because he starts talking about Mutt and then he starts talking about Marion, and you could have morphed the two together.
I'm trying to think of how you take that theme and slow it down, and make it usable in that sequence, because it's really. So what do you grab from that to really?
Well, I mean, you took the Imperial March and you played it when Darth Vader died.
I guess so. I think that's a bit difficult, but I think it's more so. It's not so much as it is Mutt dying, is that's still there, but I think the emotional glue there is the Marion's theme. I played over top of it, and I was fine with that. So
I mean, I still cried. I mean,
that just hit me so hard. Harrison Ford was so good, and it just shows that he's just not this action star. He can really pour it on when he needs to, and he's just been so he's so underrated. And that's weird to say that because he's an action star, but he's a phenomenal actor who doesn't get the respect from his peers. Like, it's disgusting how Raiders of the Lost Ark got all of those Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture and Director. And yet the guy who really, like, without him, you can't have Indiana Jones, didn't get
John got an Academy Award nomination. John Williams got a nomination.
Yes. But Harrison Ford's had one his entire career. Like, he didn't get one for The Fugitive. The Fugitive it got a pile of nominations and he didn't get one. Are you serious? It blows my mind. Oh, and Mosquito Coast. He should have got one from the Mosquito Coast, which I think is one of the best roles he's ever played. Ever. He's so underrated that way. And I kind of, they're never going to give him a nomination for this, but I mean, I think there was just that whole scene right there. Whew. Wow. That hit hard. And I didn't expect it. Didn't expect to go that deep. Yeah.
Well, hey, I called it right. I said Harrison Ford probably got $25 million for the film, and according to the internet, which is never wrong, he got $25 million.
But where did the other
$275 million go?
Where did that go? Did that go to de-aging?
Probably $25 million to Spielberg.
Oh, right.
And George Lucas has his name on it, so they probably had to give him some money.
Yeah. I also was kind of, I thought the big guy, the big bad in this, I thought he was going to be the guy that Indy's fighting at some point.
I
but
did too.
guess the Major's fist fight is the train sequence at the beginning. So that's the one thing where I'm like, oh, tradition has kind of been thrown out. But again, he didn't have a big fist fight with a baddie in Last Crusade, unless you include the fist fight on the tank at the end. The creepy crawlers. I guess it's the eels. I guess in this one, I mean, I know they had creepy crawlers in the catacombs, but I think the eels part is kind of your snakes, bug tunnel, rats, ants sequence in this movie. I'm trying to think of what else with the two map scenes. I'm like, oh, that's pretty ugly. I didn't like that. I wish, the main titles changed. The Fade from Paramount wasn't there, which is like, how could you not? Like, could you just not like take your ego and just chuck it for just a minute and just let it go? Just let them go from Paramount. Like, keep it consistent. But I guess it's like not doing a barrel gun, gun barrel sequence in a James Bond movie. It's like, why would you not? But yeah, I don't know what else. I mean, does anybody else want to in the chat want to talk about anything specific?
Andrew's bringing up the spider moment in the score from Raiders, the pluck strings.
I forgot where it was, but I heard it. Oh, yeah. I always like that stuff. But I just expected more, I think, out of the catacomb stuff. That seemed dull. Really, really dull. And I thought when I remember seeing pictures from that, I'm like, oh, there it is. That's traditional Indiana Jones. He didn't swing on his whip either. I thought he was going to escape the hotel by going through the window with his whip and whip his way down to the ground. And that would have been neat. That would have a whole whip sequence, right? Of him whipping his way down to the ground, then into a tuk-tuk. That would have been pretty cool. I like the fact that he had his whip out and it was whip versus guns this time instead of a swordsman. I thought
Why
that was
was the shoulder bag on the right side and not the left?
Was it on the right side?
Am I the only one that notices these things?
Yeah, probably.
And it was worn over his jacket as opposed to under.
Interesting. Yeah, by the way, why everybody has like a gun in that sequence, right? And he ducks under the table, but yet they decide to just stop shooting. That's why I thought, like if he had ducked under the table and then he jumped out the window, have that whip scene and him, that would have been neat. But at least he punched people. At least he shot a gun. That's what Indiana
I liked how he knocked over all those racks.
You like that? Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was him in the trailer. But I thought that was pretty cool. I always wished for a whole movie that was like the prologue of Raiders. I feel like they never really did it like that. Right. I think, well, to be fair, they bookended the trilogy perfectly, right? You had booby traps in Raiders, and then it ended with booby traps in Last Crusade. And I thought, that's great. Whether they thought about that, I don't know, right? And then, of course, Riding Out of the Sunset. Brilliant way to end the trilogy. I still think that this Indiana Jones, there's certain things you come to expect, and I thought that booby traps and all that sort of stuff, like I thought the water thing was going to lead to something else. I want to know what the whole Atlas ball thing was and what that led to. Just trying to escape from all that, and I thought that would have been much more interesting instead of just kind of walking in there and finding it, and at least they made those kind of discoveries somewhat interesting in the first three movies, right? Having to get through the rats in order to get to the Knight's Tomb, the bug tunnel, the whole opening to Raiders. Those things are suspenseful and interesting, and so it's much like the whole middle sequence where they go get the skull in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. It's like dull, really dull, and then you had this dull sequence in the catacombs there. So yeah, but anyway,
I'm really disappointed with the score as a whole.
Yeah, yeah, I think again it works much better in the film.
It does because the soundtrack's only 70 minutes and it's chopped up pretty bad. And I guess now we can spend like next 40 years like when we're gonna get the expanded edition.
It's never gonna happen. They've had chances, anniversaries. 2 films have come out now where they could have gone, let's do it right. Let's get them all out. And they'd make.
Do you think Mike's ever going to get a chance to do it?
I would say that Mike has. I would say he is either he's asked, he's working on it, and it's going to take forever. I'm sure there's tons of licensing that they have to get through, whether tapes are in right condition. Although I mean, Last Crusade sounded great on that box set. I'm sure he wants to do it right. And now you have 5 films. And I don't know, again, I don't know how the rights work with the American Federation of Musicians. I think there was a cutoff date as to when you can, for the reuse fees or whatever. I think that's why we're only seeing a certain amount of expanded editions up to a certain year. And I'm sure it's difficult, but I mean, you could do the trilogy, but if you do the trilogy, then you got to do the other 2. And I'm sure there's so many rights and people you got, and I from what I've heard, Disney is.
If I can get Temple of Doom and Last Crusade, I think we've got a pretty good representation from Raiders.
Oh, I think again, DCC is brilliant. Yep. That album is sensational. I think the difficulties that they're going to have, and from what I've heard from other record producers, is it's just Disney is difficult to deal with. It's.
I hear they need money though.
Yeah, but it's almost close to impossible to get anything out from them. And so yeah, and now that 20th Century Fox, I mean, this isn't 20th Century Fox, but I'm like, when you had Nick Redman around, I mean, he was the only kind of point contact there to get all that 20th Century Fox material out. Now you don't have that. And then who do you have at Disney? And I'm sure there's a million people you're going to have to go through in order to get things approved. So I could see this being extremely difficult for Mike Matessino, and he might have to work with another record label, or I mean, I don't know how much money you'd have to throw at in order to do this. This seems like something that would be more along the lines of something that Entrada would be able to get into, because they do have a long-standing relationship with Disney. But Mike Matessino, of course, is going to be the only one touching this stuff. But I'm shocked that now wouldn't have been it would have been a perfect time to say, I
was really expecting something to come out like, last month, get that email, be like, Indiana Jones fans, yeah. It's here. And it's like,
and even Star Wars. I'm just shocked that the two of some of the greatest series of film scores have just, we don't have our definitive editions. Seems very strange to me. I don't know, but where we get everything else, like we're getting an expanded Hot Fuzz from David Arnold. Yeah.
No way.
And it's like, okay, all right, great. Where's the stuff that really needs to be re-released? So I hope one day we get to see it. But I mean, we have a whole wealth of music right now as it is. But I don't understand why the soundtrack album to Dial of Destiny was so poorly produced. It's so strange. It's really strange. It's really, I mean, Crystal Skull is an oddly produced album too. But at least the end credits are where the end credits belong. There's no confusion. So, but yeah, I don't know what else we could say about this, but I'm looking forward to seeing it again. I want to see it again just because I want to pay attention to certain things. Now I know where everything is. I was really caught up in the story. I really was, to be honest. And
I was thinking about canceling my soundtrack order for this.
You know you need it. You know you're a collector. You need to have that complete a complete collection.
Um,
Isn't it the maestro himself who doesn't want it? Doesn't want Star Wars, Indiana Jones? I don't know. I know I've heard rumors that he doesn't want Sugarland Express,
yeah, I've heard
but
that too.
I don't know why he would not want the rest of this stuff out. Seems odd to me, especially if he's so very proud of it, right? You got a 9 scores from Star Wars is amazing, you know, and now you got 5 from Indiana Jones. Like, oh God, how do you do that? Like, has there been any other composer that has written so much music for 2 enormous
No,
series?
no.
I can't think of any of them. I mean, we've had trilogies of scores from composers, but man, 9 Star Wars scores? No one expected that. And then other themes for other films and rides and like, jeez,
I guess you got Howard Shore with 6 Tolkien films.
Oh, that's true.
You know,
That's great. Yeah.
but Lord of the Rings are available. The Hobbit.
Well, and
film.
then that got a lot of respect. It did. I mean, Doug Adams, a lot of credit goes to him. I mean, that whole series of film scores got so much respect, and that's where I don't know why. You know, people like producers would look at Lord of the Rings. Well, man, they did that right. Let's do that for
Yeah.
Star Wars. You know, we could do a big thing. We could sell books. We can sell exclusive this and that, and people will buy it.
Thank you for coming by, Andrew. It was good to have you.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Yeah, thank you very much. But this was I think this was a really good discussion. Thanks for letting me talk about it. I wish you'd enjoyed the movie more.
I didn't walk out. I was expecting to walk out.
By the way, the sound of this film sounded great.
I thought it looked good too.
Yes.
I was talking to Big Al, and he's like, "It looked all brown," and I'm like, "I thought it looked good. I thought it looked like an Indiana Jones film.
Yes.
It just didn't feel like an Indiana Jones film."
It was way better than Janusz Kaminski, who just barfed all over Crystal
I just
Skull.
don't like his work.
I like his work. I like half of his stuff, and the other half I hate. Like, you know what's an ugly movie is the Fabelmans. What are they doing with the color grading? That blue, that teal orange color grading for it's horrendous. And then
What happened to that score? Let's have that discussion.
And then I rewatched Bridge of Spies. Damn. I'm wondering whether they almost wanted to make that a black and white movie, and they almost desaturated everything to make it seem like a black and white movie, but the lighting in that film is horrendous. But I like his work in Minority Report. I like his work in Catch Me If You Can. I love Saving Private Ryan. Love his camera work in Schindler's List. Lost World actually wasn't that bad. Amistad wasn't that bad. But there's other films that are just like from what I've seen from West Side Story, a film I will never watch. I will never watch because I hate musicals. That looked ugly, fake, phony. I hate his outdoor lighting. He overlights it, and it looks like it's all shot in a studio, and it's gross. I'm trying to think of what else we have in the Spielberg. Like Munich is, I don't know. There's just something about the way that there's just something about his look. The pastel color palette in Crystal Skull is horrendous, but I heard that they went back and regraded it to make it look as close as possible to the other 3 Indiana Jones films for the 4K release. But I remember watching a behind the scenes video of him talking about the look of that film. And he's like, oh, we wanted to go back to the Technicolor look of Douglas Slocum's cinematography, brilliant cinematography in the first 3 films. He's like, yeah, that's what we wanted to go for. But then he's like, well, it takes place in the 1950s. So we have to kind of grit it down to make it look like it's from the 1950s. And I'm like, what? Wait, hold on. The instruction is make it look like the other films. And now you're like, nope, we got to make it look like shit. It's ugly. It is horrendously ugly. That movie is awful to look at. Really is. I mean, although there are some stunning shots, I still think Indy with the mushroom cloud is one of the most amazing shots in the entire series. I'm trying to think of like the great shot in Dial of Destiny, the one that kind of sticks with you What would it be? I mean, I think seeing the bomber, the bomber flying over everything was like was really wild. But I'm wondering what is that? Was that one shot? Like, I mean, for me, Temple of Doom is just seeing that whole set for the first time, right? I love that shot. Or the pushing on Indy with the minecart light in Temple of Doom is the greatest Indy shot of all time.
Yeah.
There's so much in Raiders. Great shots in Last Crusade and the whole bridge sequence. But I'm thinking, what's the one great shot in Dial of Destiny? I also thought the camera movement was a little weird. There was nothing really special about the movement of the camera. It was well shot, but nothing felt dramatic to me. Like even getting into the catacombs and discovering the tomb, it's like it all seemed to be all steady cam, and I'm not a big fan of that. So I don't know, just even seeing the dial work for the first time just didn't seem special. It's just like an over the shoulder shot and you see him kind of playing with it, and I'm like, make it special, make the camera do something to make it look nice. Anyway. Oh, hey, Star Trek. Oh, great. Okay. I hope we've done programs on all the Star Treks of the generations. And I hope you really, really I hope you enjoy the Star Trek shows. The cave entry was nice, but also the title card was a missed opportunity. Yeah, I agree. I'm trying to think of the great one shot that comes from this and goes, oh, yeah, that's Dial of Destiny. The fact that I have to think about that, maybe there isn't one.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it was competent. It was competent, but there was nothing special about the movements of the camera. Like I remember being a kid and looking at the way the camera moved in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like that great tracking shot where it's a simple dialogue sequence where it's like, when does the sun hit the map room, right? Yeah. And it's this great tracking shot of them walking through. I'm like, wow, that's stunning. The amazing wonder as she's drinking in the Raven, or just a simple dialogue sequence in his apartment, which is all one single take with the exception of an insert shot of him throwing the gun into his bag. I'm like, I noticed those things. But again, that's Spielberg at that time just was, man, that guy shot movies like nobody's business. But I still felt I was missing something just special. That one special shot. Although, I mean, him kind of like all laid out on his chair, kind of like, waking up from a night's drink, kind of summed up that character, but still doesn't seem like an iconic shot. But anyway,
I'm glad you liked the movie.
Yeah. I'm just happy that I liked it. I am. I'd hate to be this miserable person who's like, this is a piece of crap. And I've read reviews, man. People are just going.
I'm not there. I'm not there. I'm like, you know what? I'm just kind of more indifferent. I think this could have been something really great if a few things had been changed, some tweaks. But
yes,
but the score for me is the biggest letdown. I just don't think it was a good Indiana Jones score.
I'm glad you brought this up. The UFO taking off music is brilliant. That and the cue beforehand where Irina gets obliterated and they're escaping the temple. Those two pieces are amazing. I think they're highly underrated, and they're just as good as any other piece in any of the Indiana Jones movies. But that UFO stuff, I even showed it to my son because he's very much interested in computer graphics and things of that sort. And I said, you have to watch this. Now, you render out edits for your video games and whatever, and it takes forever, and you got these giant files. But just think about how long that would have taken to conceive and then execute. And it's there's some great shots in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And again, as much as I'm trashing Janusz Kaminski, Spielberg's eye is pretty great. And there's some iconic shots in that. But that whole sequence with the UFO taken off is amazing. Amazing. I can't imagine how much work went into that. And yes, it is a CGI sequence, but it still feels enormous. The water effects, all the rocks, and geez, the lighting. but the music, holy cow, that whole crystal skull motif right at the end, it amazing. I can't think of that amazing cue from Dial of Destiny, but that's similar. I think maybe it is all that lead up to the time travel stuff. There's some great stuff in there. And Voller gets, I mean, God, it's great to hear that I want to hear that in concert. I want to hear his bad guy motif. Why isn't there a concert suite of that? It plays so well.
It does.
On that opening track. So, yeah. But I mean, look, what you didn't hate it though, right? Like you didn't leave going.
Like, I don't like a lot of the people I follow on YouTube. I mean, they're just like burn this motherfucker to the ground. You know, like I was at the 90th birthday Kennedy Center concert. You know, I'm not there. I mean, if it was on TV, you know, and you know, I'm recovering from food poisoning, I would leave it on. You know, hey, I'm not going to go out and buy it. I don't think I'll ever watch it again. I think the soundtrack will come. I'm going to listen to the LP. Maybe the sound is better.
Yeah, I'd like to know.
I think there's a lot of stuff that should be on there that's not, and a lot that is on there probably could have been left off.
I agree.
I don't like Helena's theme at all. I can't remember it. I don't like the cut and paste stuff that they did.
Agreed.
And this was a score for any other John Williams movie, I would probably be like, it's not my favorite, but this is Indiana Jones, and this is what probably started this entire soundtrack journey for me was Raiders of the Lost Ark. So it's got to be, it's got to be Jana Rogers in her Goonies t-shirt on the beach at Seaside on an afternoon in May. It's got to be all that, and it wasn't any of that.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen online, a lot of people are like, well, he's 91 and he's still like, writing the best music and let's give him credit for that. And I'm like, okay, I will give him credit. 91 still, pumping this stuff out, but I'm not going to pander to John Williams and go, just because he's John Williams, I'm going to give him
I'm not either. Like the Fablemans, I'm like, where's the rest of the film score?
Yeah, right.
Why'd you even bother?
And I don't think that John Williams would want to be pandered to. I think he would want an honest reaction to this. I'm not going to throw a whole bunch of vitriol at him and like, condemn him for the rest of his life because he didn't like write the greatest Indiana Jones score. But I am someone who is, I will be critical when I have to be critical, and I'll praise when I have to praise. And I don't like being overly critical of this score, and I think I'm being totally honest in my opinions on what I've heard, and now having heard it in the film and experienced it, I think what I'm saying is somewhat valid, and others are going to have different opinions, which is fine. I'm not saying you have to hate this or be indifferent the way I am, but I think that I think from the stuff that I've heard that I think is great, it's just I wish that was all translated to the rest of the score. But then again, I still think it's overscored. I think there's just too much in it. It doesn't have to have 2 hours of music. There's portions where I'm like, he's just playing over top of this to fill the silence. And then I guess someone also mentioned this, like when you hear these or see these films with just wall-to-wall music, I think that the music is trying to cover up something that has gone wrong, either with the edit or something with the movie. It's filling space. And that's what I got with this score. It's filling space. And I got that a lot with the prequel music that John Williams wrote. And some of the other, I think maybe Rise of Skywalker was just filled with like, it was boring. It didn't really mean anything. You don't have to have wall-to-wall music. The original trilogy fit because all of that kind of like the beats, the themes and everything all worked together. It was telling a story. This one, I just felt it was a collection of cues that are filling space with some occasional greatness, with the exception of that bad guy, Voller's bad guy motif, which played through brilliantly. Helena's theme played, but again, we had discussed earlier about tonally, it's not right. So again, it's not, I'm not hating this because he's 91 years old and and because his style has changed or anything of that, or I'm expecting him to write another Raiders of the Lost Ark. I'm not, but it's just, I think you're allowed to criticize him no matter how old he is and what he's done. And just because he's John Williams doesn't mean he gets a pass.
Yeah. And I think that's been my problem with the comment section on YouTube and Instagram in the past week, is people are just falling over themselves. I'm like, this is the most beautiful thing here. I'm like, no, it's not. This isn't up to par, people. And they're like, oh, you, and I'm like, no, look, I would say something to him. Yeah, if I see him in 2 weeks, I'd be like, hey, look, can we get a concert suite for Mads Mikkelsen's theme from Dial of Destiny? Were you told to reuse cues from, in the first 20 minutes, or was that done in post? What's going on with that? Can we get a Sugarland Express? But
it's interesting because I'm wondering whether William Ross was brought in to do kind of like what he did on Chamber of Secrets, and adapt those previous cues and mash them all together. But I don't know why that would have to be done in the first place. And maybe was that a last minute thing? Were things being changed constantly that they're like, forget it, let's just get this done?
The open sequence being changed that much?
I don't know. And I think that's that's also, I mean, look, it's James Mangold working with a composer he's never worked before. And he's also working with a composer who works with pen and a paper and a piano, who doesn't mock up stuff. I'm assuming Beltrami mocks up everything for him.
I'm sure.
And things are changed on the, and he's got an enormous team of people working with him. And that's probably what he's come to expect. But now you're kind of, I mean, he's saying all the right things, but I'm pretty sure John Williams is forced on him. If Mangold had his choice, he'd be like, Williams, write a couple of themes and I'll bring Beltrami in to kick ass.
He said originally that's all that he was going to do, but then he just kept writing.
Right. I think Beltrami, that would have been interesting. In an alternate universe, I would love to hear Beltrami's take on Indiana Jones, because he did a magnificent job of honoring Michael Kamen in his 2 Die Hard scores, especially the last one. And he can write action music like nobody's business. So I think a collaboration a la John Powell and John Williams in Solo for Indiana Jones 5 with maybe Williams and Beltrami would have been fun. Would have been interesting. Maybe it would have been better. I don't know. But I love Beltrami's action material. I mean, go back and listen to like Gods of Egypt. There's some pretty cool stuff in there. But yeah.
Let me hit Dr. Matt Studio. Greetings from Britain. He's seen it twice already and enjoyed it. I'm glad you liked it, and his dad loved it as well. Good. Cool. I'm glad y'all had a good experience.
Yes, that's great.
Yeah.
Great to read.
I'm always glad when people enjoy something. I sometimes I think people think I hate everything. I don't, and I don't disparage anyone for enjoying something. I'm glad everyone who enjoyed that Kennedy Center concert. God bless you.
Yep.
I don't know how you did, but I'm glad you did. And yeah, the CD doesn't get released until August 9th. Yeah, I mean, I can understand that in vinyl, but not the CD. The CD should have started. Yeah.
Are you getting that picture disc of the Raiders?
No.
Oh, wow. I thought that would be something you'd get.
So that was a slap in the face. It's like, it's the 40th anniversary of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Here's the theme on a 7-inch LP. What the fuck you do? Wow, thank you so much. Can I have some fries with that? Maybe a Frosty? I like the bare minimum. You're not even trying to do something, but you're just like, hey, Eric, I got you this pen for your birthday. I'll put it in the mail next week. I hope you like it. I used it a little bit, but it's for you. Like, fuck you. Fuck you.
That's why I love you, Daniel. Just honest. Just let it flow. Let it flow.
When I started, before I started this channel, I'm like, you know what? I always want to be honest and truthful with people, and just whatever I'm feeling. I think if you do that, one, you don't have to worry about anything, but
but two, I think people respond to honesty. And that's what I'm saying. I don't hate it as much like Neurotic or Geeks and Gamers or anything like that. But I think it was a letdown of the film. I think there's some good points here. It could have been a better film with some tweaking and some rewrites, some more rewrites apparently.
Yeah, it was like 5.
The score, the soundtrack album they put out, it's dog shit. It's crap.
It's not good.
It's not.
It is really not good.
And the score for an Indiana Jones score, I feel like it feels like a rough draft to me. You know, maybe if Herbert Spencer was the orchestrator, or maybe John Williams isn't being pushed, you know, like maybe Steven Spielberg had come in like, okay, this is what we tracked it with. And John was like, okay. And Steven would come out and be like, well, hey, can you redo this? Can you put Mutt's theme in here when he's talking about how Mutt died, and then morph it into Marion's theme? He's talking about Marion. I don't know if he's being pushed to do that or if anyone's making suggestions to him. Because you reach a certain point in your career where no one except God himself is going to offer you a suggestion because you're at the pinnacle of everything. And John Williams is at that point in his career. No one's going to say anything to him derogatory. I don't see it happening.
Right.
And I don't think James Mangold's going to have the balls to go up and do it either. I just don't, because he's working for Disney. He's not making a film. He's working for Disney. Whatever Disney wants, Disney's going to get it.
Well, and that's a good point. I mean, again, I think mentioned earlier that there's just so many fingers in this pie, and it's inevitable. It's Disney. I mean, it's just think about the amount of, like, it's no longer like George Lucas and Steven Spielberg
doing their thing.
$20 million for Raiders Lost Ark and making essentially like an independent film because of again, George Lucas grounding Spielberg in 1981 and saying, you're going to make this movie this way.
On budget, on time.
Yeah, I'm going to fund it, and we'll see who's going to release it. But we're going to do this ourselves, and that's the thing. That's where film has changed. It's just it's massive studios. Look, and massive studios always had, their fingers and things, but at least those films had a personality, and you knew when you saw a Steven Spielberg film. And again, he has it in his contract where he has final cut and all that sort of stuff. But it's just, those are Steven Spielberg. You hire Steven Spielberg to make a Steven Spielberg movie. You don't hire James Mangold to control him and make the movie that you have as an executive, right? Let this guy make the movie. And I know I know it's a business. But just, when there's so much meddling and so many people getting together, all these ideas just explode and they never really come together. You have to have that singular voice, at least.
You too.
You got to have that style. You got to, that's why I don't know who directed what in the MCU. It all looks the same flat, boring stuff. And it's like, is that what you want? Why you keep hiring these? I know why. You keep hiring younger and younger and younger so you can control them easier, right? You get these hotshot directors who come out with one great movie from an independent film. It's like, hey, you want to come work on a big budget movie? Oh, absolutely. I can't wait to work on Spider-Man. Yeah, but you're going to have no creative input whatsoever. None.
I would like to see a Sam Raimi Doctor Strange movie.
The new one?
No, I would like to see a Sam Raimi do a Doctor Strange movie.
Right. And you know what?
Do a Doctor Strange movie.
His voice somewhat got into that new film. I could see it. It still, though, felt flat to me. It did.
Yeah, very flat.
You know what I just watched? I just watched Quick and the Dead again. And it's got so much personality. It's a Sam Raimi Western, but it's got so much. It's inventive. It takes that genre and just twists it around and makes it so interesting. It's from a certain point of view. I miss that. And so I think James Mangold, man, I would love to see if he could Logan Indiana Jones. That would have been something. Like, when I saw Logan, I'm like, this is a comic book movie? You're going to do this? This is crazy good. You took a chance where I mean, I still felt like the Indiana Jones, like this Indiana Jones film still felt like Indiana Jones. It still looked like Indiana Jones, but I don't get that personal connection, like the story that he wanted to tell. Again, it just felt like it felt like so much meddling and so much, just too many people talking and coming with ideas and going, it's like, how are we going to make our $300 million back? And he didn't have to make it for that much.
No.
And so that's why, again, Raiders just very, it's focused. All three of those films focused. It's George Lucas producing, hiring Steven Spielberg, trusting Steven Spielberg to make those movies. That's it. That's it. Go. Everybody else, do what Steven Spielberg says. And then that's where Crystal Skull just, I mean, you can see him being forced into this. Like Spielberg's like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this.
He didn't want to do it. Yeah.
I'll do it because you're my friend, George. And it's just, they're just so, Spielberg should not be making these type of movies again. And I mean, like Ready Player One almost killed him. It's like, go do your dramas. That's where you're at, Spielberg. I want to see that. Go do those. You're done with the popcorn films. Unless you do something like, War of the Worlds or Minority Report. I'm fine with those more adult, serious thrillers. But you guys are no longer 30 years old. And
neither are we, my friend.
Yeah. So it's like, anyway, I'm on a rant. And I'm not really sure where I'm going with this, but anyway, where do you think Indiana Jones is going to go from here?
Probably the number 2 biggest box office bomb in the history of movies.
Okay. Besides that, where do you think Lucasfilm is taking this?
Honestly, I think Disney and Lucasfilm and Marvel are going to have so much financial problems coming up. I mean, what I would like to see is I'd like to see, like you suggested, a cartoon series. I don't know who you get to write it, but not the people that are there now. I don't know who you put as the showrunner, but I mean, it can't be the CEO of Disney. I mean, it's got to be someone, with the vision and the balls to do it.
Yeah. Are we going to see a short round series?
I don't think so.
That's interesting.
Would I like to? Yeah. I would have liked to have seen Short Round in this film. And
I think when Disney saw him win the Academy Award, I'm sure they're like, let's milk this. Let's just do it. But with the failure of Willow, the fact that they even took it off their own streaming service is
for a tax write-off,
freaking hilarious and sad. But I think a short round series would be interesting. But again, I just don't. Indiana Jones is not Star Wars. Indiana Jones has a much smaller group of fans, and
but you know what I've learned since Dial Destiny came out. Like there's people that love Star Wars, and then there's people that like, I love Indiana Jones, and it's almost more like a family bond with Indiana Jones than what it is with Star Wars. Star Wars is like a fantasy, but Indiana Jones, people our age, that was like your surrogate dad growing up.
Interesting. I just don't know.
He also represents the fantasy that you could have become.
Right.
Because you never could be Luke Skywalker. You can't move things with your hands. You can't get a lightsaber. You can't fly the Millennium Falcon. But you can put on a brown leather jacket and a fedora, go out in the backyard with a homemade whip, and then you can take history classes and you can get a degree in history or anthropology, sociology, archaeology, art history, all that. And you can kind of be little Indiana Jones.
I think he felt real. He felt grounded. He was also flawed, which made him human.
Yeah, he got his ass beat every film.
Yeah.
But he kept going.
Yeah. That's what makes him such a great character. But I think the animated series, if they did it sort of in that Spider-Verse style, that would be kind of neat. Or if they did it kind of like an old I don't know, like an old 80s kind of cartoon or something like that. I don't know. I just think they could do it. I mean, that whole concept, someone years ago did that animated intro to like the further adventures of Indiana Jones, and it was fantastic. And I'm like, can we see more of that? Let's do that. I think you could have so much fun with the character, but I mean, you got to throw money at it, and I guess they'll see who wants to see more Indiana Jones based on the box office receipts from this one. Helena Shaw, I have no interest in seeing a Helena Shaw film or series. She is, I mean, yeah, I still don't know who she is, and she's so unlikable, and there's nothing that I could connect with. Even my daughter couldn't connect with her watching the movie. She liked certain aspects of her, but I was like, no, no, she'd rather be Marion. So
I still love Marion. I have always loved Marion. I've always loved Marion's theme. I think that's the best theme from the entire series is Marion's theme.
it's so beautiful, and it's so dead on, and she's so good. And she, God, bringing her back. I mean, if that was a reshoot, good on them. At least that's one thing
That was
great they came about it, and it was she. Wow, that just ruined me. So, yeah, but I don't know where Indiana Jones is going from here. I have no idea. I think
maybe a comic book from.
Yeah, and I like the comic books. I have a bunch of like the Marvel ones, the Dark Horse ones, and I like them. Like there was the Further Adventures of Indiana Jones. Those were always fun. Like there's so much there. I mean, there's just so much you can mine just for the comic books, from the novels, from video games. My God, if they can adapt some of the video games, Fate of Atlantis, would you please adapt that? There you go. Like adapt that into an animated movie. You can imagine. I mean, man, there's possibilities, I think, for animation for Indiana Jones, because then you could still, like, nobody should take over Harrison Ford. There should be no more Indiana Jones films. You can't do that, but I think animation would be the best way to do it, and not 3D animated. I don't want like this hyper real 3D animated stuff. I would love to see a 2D, like Spider-Verse type style.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like comic book, but sort of in that exaggerated, fun, visually interesting. But then don't decide that you have to, oh well, Indiana Jones's music has to change with the times. Like, no. Gordy Hobb wants to write one. Christopher Willis wants to write a Indiana Jones score. Let these guys, Joel McNeely, like John Debney, let these guys write traditional Indiana Jones scores. I mean, there's so much potential for a cartoon. Oh, I don't want to get excited about that because it's never going to happen.
Andrew brings up Greatest March and Marion's theme are very they are.
Yeah. Yeah. They sparkle. And but I think that's all I have to say about this. How about you?
Yeah. I'm still pondering just canceling my order, but
you shouldn't. I think you're going to regret it. And
you're right.
You need it for your collection. Even just for the collectability part, you got them all.
I got them all. I know.
And by the way, the art isn't bad, but you should see all the other art. What's his name? Tony. He's got if you go on Twitter, find the artist who did the one sheet. He has a whole bunch of alternates, great alternates, paintings of Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny. Great art. It's not Drew Struzan, but I think it's really, really cool that they got a painted poster. Fantastic.
I'm probably not going to get tracked down the one sheet for this one.
I don't like I don't like the new logo. That's the only thing I don't like. I don't like that new logo. Yeah, I wish Ian could be here too. I want to when he goes and sees the movie, I want to hear his take on it. So I hope he does a video, or at least comes back on here and we could talk about it again. But yeah, I don't know what there's anything else I want to say about it. But
thanks for making time. I know you're busy.
Oh yeah, no, I'm glad. I mean, I there's no one else I could talk to about this, right? I can type online, but just getting it out and talking with somebody who, like-minded, and it's
I feel like I've caught so much hate in the past week on Instagram and YouTube, because I'll make a comment and people will just like roast me, and I'm like, guys, come on, really? Felina's theme, really? Compared to what? Where are you comparing this to? And then they'll come back and they'll back down and like, well, I mean, he's like ancient and he's not doing his best work anymore. And I'm like, that's not what I'm saying.
Right.
That's not what I'm saying.
It's not an argument. That's not. I don't care. I don't care if he only has one arm and half a brain. If he's going to write the score, he's going to try to write the best score he can. and that should be criticized. You can't just give him a pass because of who he is. Although, I mean, it's really well written. It is. Nobody else is writing. No, you don't hear scores much like this in movies these days. Rarely. And so yes, it's a gift.
I think you can hear more of them overseas than what you can in the States.
True. Oh, and that is very much true. As for like Hollywood, it's really the end of the era is now. I mean, and it is a gift that we got this. I'm not saying that it's not. I wouldn't have expected anything else from this film. Unless again, if Beltrami was brought on and you still would have kept it orchestral, it's great. But I mean, this could have gone off the rails. So the fact that we even had John Williams on board and that classic sound is still there, awesome. Marks for that. Super. But then when you get a nitty gritty about it, again, competently written, very well written in that professional, creative way that John Williams writes, but just most of it fell flat for me, with the exception of maybe 40 minutes or so of highlights. And then the whole tracking of other indie music is sad. It's sad that they made him do that. It's sad.
Or was it done in post and he scored something entirely different?
It was all sounded newly recorded, right? It all sounded newly recorded. Nothing seemed like it was tracked from elsewhere. And I think it was newly recorded because they had to meet the beats of the, like that. All that editing was great. It all worked musically from one thing to another. I was surprised at how well that was, but it's just, we've heard this before. Don't do this. Stop it. Nobody likes this. But then again, we're the only people that notice. We are the only people that notice. And
the 10 people that watch the show.
Yeah. Like my kids and my wife, they don't care. They don't know. And I think that may be the point. But for us, I feel like we got gypped.
Yeah.
Especially for that sequence. If it was elsewhere, I think I'd be okay. But man, that train sequence deserves its own thing. We should be celebrating. It's like Williams wrote this 25-minute massive cue for the train, and isn't it awesome? And it isn't. So
ending on a low note, everyone.
But besides that, I enjoyed the movie. I'm really looking forward to seeing it again. I can't wait to see that whole opening sequence again. And it's the most emotional I've ever been watching a Indiana Jones film. So they got me. They got me. But again, it was a competently made Indiana Jones film, and I think that's all I expected. I think I said that before. It's like, just make something that's enjoyable, and I enjoyed it. I had a good time, and I wasn't, for the most part, wasn't cringing at monkeys or poor CGI or mutt. I mean, Shorty 2.0, thank God he didn't steal a lot of the movie. Thank goodness. Yeah, besides that, I enjoyed it. Shocked at some points, like really shocked. But and Harrison Ford owned it.
He did show up.
He did. Yeah.
But as always, adopt, don't shop. Keep listening to great film scores. Check out Cinematic Sound Radio. Erik just dropped a new.
Indy without a hand. This is my Christmas ornament. And it was dropped, and he lost his hand. So he's like Luke Skywalker sword. But it does. You know what? It makes sound. Oh, where's the button? Where's the button for the sound?
Don't give me a copyright strike.
And there's Raiders March after that, but I won't play it. Anyway, it's my cool little Christmas ornament yeah. Oh, and also the doll. Love it. Still think that's the coolest thing. Thank you very much for that.
I was on the fence about that, and Ian pushed me over. So
Ian did that? Ian pushed you over?
I asked him, I'm like, do you think Erik would like this? And he's like, yes. And I'm like,
oh my God.
Are you sure? I'm like, maybe I should get him something else. And he's like, no, you need to get Erik that. And I'm like, well, okay. So
that is one of the coolest. And I don't know if you can see it, but you're.
And you know what? And then it came because I don't have one of those. And I was like,
well, your note is still here.
am I
Right
this
there.
good of a friend to send it to him?
You are. You're great. But I still have your note. Play the map room while opening. I treasure that. That's one of the greatest gifts I've ever received. I love it. And it's with Ant-Man, who you sent, and then I got another stuffy Ant-Man up there, and then my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. No, what is it? What did you send me? Is it a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle character? No, He-Man. My
He-Man.
He-Man character is around here somewhere too. So, but that
Just wait
Indiana
till-
Jones one,
Just wait
that
till you
is-
get this
that's
year's
brilliant.
Christmas present.
yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Wow. And the fact it's in such good shape too. Holy
I
smokes.
know.
He was-
I got that for a really good price, and I was like, oh.
Well,
Yeah.
I thank you, and I never expected that, and
Mhm.
and I don't have much. Like I got a couple hats. Like I got an indie fedora here. It's all very dusty. This one's from Disney, and I have one from Temple of Doom that's up there, like from
Well,
1984.
If next year goes as well as what I'm hoping business wise, I'm going to get all three of us, you, myself, and Ian, the real Herbert Johnson matching hats.
Oh, shut up! Shut
Okay, I'll
up.
show you.
Oh no! Come on. I want the $3.2 million watch. You know what I want.
Like if Herbert Johnson showed up on your doorstep, he would be like, no.
It was one of the most absurd things I've ever seen. Like, how do you tell time? It really doesn't do what it's supposed to do. There's many mechanisms. It's the dial of destiny. But man, I can't. What time is it? I don't know. Look at all the shit that's in here. Oh man. Anyway, yeah, great.
You know what I'm talking about, the Herbert Johnson hats, right?
Yes. Oh yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's why I said shut up. I know what you're talking about. I love these little hats. Hats never really fit my head. It's tough for me to even get a baseball hat to fit my head. Although these hats, hold on. When I was younger and skinnier, they did fit my head nicely. So that's me filming my action adventure film when I was 20.
That's cool.
So they fit my head really, really well. But now big fat bald head. It doesn't fit. So it just stays up there. I can look at it, but as long as it's on my head. So yeah. But I know those ones are sexy. They are just, and are they in the style of the Raiders hat?
You can get Raiders, Temple of Doom, or Last Crusade, and then there's a few other options like they call it the travel hat, and there's like the DC hat.
Wow. I think the best hat was Temple of Doom. I think that's the one that fit him the best. The one in Raiders looks old and worn, but it's big. The one in Last Crusade looks small. I think the one in Crystal Skull looks good. This one, I think it looked fine as well. I think Temple of Doom was the one that fit the best. Although you know what I loved? I loved watching the whole opening sequence, and his hat stayed on no matter what. He's on that train, the wind is blowing, and that hat stayed on. He's being thrown over the edge, and the hat's not coming off. Stapled to his head. I love that. I love that gag. He rarely loses his hat, so it's great. All right, I gotta go. I'm hungry.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for stopping by.
Yeah.
In the comment section, tell me what you thought about the movie. What you thought about the score. Thank you everyone for your time, and take care.